All right, well, we are right at 5, and so I want to respect everybody's time. I am really thrilled to welcome everyone tonight, this evening, or whatever time zone you happen to be in. Tonight, we're having a conversation, as we typically do, about building a just and equitable future for women here in Washington State, but also around the world. And tonight's topic is building a new future for formerly incarcerated women. This is a topic that our panelists are very passionate about, have lived experiences that they're going to share with us. So I first just want to say a thank you to them for taking on what I'm sure can be an emotional burden to be able to share those lived experiences with us and educate us and let us know what more as citizens we can, and advocates, and that we can be doing to really support and help them in their work. I'd like to, recognize that we are, I'm here in downtown Seattle, and I'm the webinar master for this evening. And so I would like to recognize the land, the native land that we are on, and those of us are on, as we enjoy our evening together here. And also to do an introduction of myself. So my name is Frances Donegan Ryan. I am the board president for Center for Women and Democracy. And really want to say a very warm welcome to those of you who have attended events before, but particularly a warm welcome to those of you who might be your very first Center for Women and Democracy event. So we're thrilled to have you here. And without further ado, I really want to introduce our panelists. But before that, let me just give you a few housekeeping notes. So you can submit questions at any time to the panelists. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or you can begin a conversation in the chat function. I will be monitoring both and then facilitating a Q&A after our panelists and moderator have spoken. So we will get to your questions and comments and ideas at the end of the presentation. And just an encouragement to be inclusive and respectful as well in your questions and comments. So introducing our moderator and panelists, if you'd all like to join us on camera, we have Jamie Hawk of the ACLU of Washington's Campaign for Smart Justice, Brittany Lovely, who's a Washington statewide reentry counselor. We have Suri Cook, a servant leader and attorney, and Tara Simmons, a civil survival project, and also Washington State representative for the 23rd Legislative District. Again, to you amazing women, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Jamie to really take it away and lead us in this very thoughtful conversation. Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much, Frances, and thank you to the Center for Women and Democracy for hosting us and inviting me to be the moderator for this evening's discussion. My name's Jamie Hawk. I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Washington, and it's really great to be here with all of you, and I'm so excited to hear from our incredible panelists this evening. I get to collaborate with these inspiring women through our work on projects and several issues, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion. As Frances highlighted, tonight's panel will focus on some of the unique challenges and barriers that women face while they're incarcerated and through reentry, as well as some of the laws, policies that need to change and programs that need to be expanded or created really to improve access and opportunities for currently and formerly incarcerated women to build a new future. So as a quick roadmap over the next 45 minutes, our speakers will introduce themselves, share some thoughts about our topic and their work for about 4 to 5 minutes each, and then I'll present some questions and we'll have a discussion as a panel, and we'll try to keep some time at the end for any questions from the audience. So, and Francis, thank you for introducing our three amazing panelists. So, we've got Representative Simmons, Miss Brittany Lovely, and Miss Sarai Cook here with us. So let's get started. To kick off our discussion, let's start with Representative Simmons, if that's okay. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your work and share some thoughts about our topic. And then we'll hear from Brittany, and then we'll hear from Sarai. And Sarai has some slides she's going to share with us and a presentation about trauma and ways to support women who are incarcerated and in reentry. Representative Simmons.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's an honor to be here with women that I deeply admire and love and appreciate. Women who I've had similar lived experiences, but they're always a little bit of differences. But the biggest thing is, I'm a state representative today, but it's been a really, really difficult challenge to get to this place. I'm also the director of a program called the Civil Survival Project, where we are formerly incarcerated led and majority staffed by formerly incarcerated people working to help people overcome the legal barriers to reentry. But I really got into this work because of my own lived experiences of growing up in generational poverty and trauma and violence. That led to juvenile system involvement, foster care involvement. I was a teen mother at 14 years old. And really, I went to jail many times before I landed in prison. And it was really through a lot of people investing in me and helping me heal the trauma that I was able to come out and go to law school and become an attorney and fight to the state Supreme Court when they told me I couldn't be a lawyer, and win, and then become a state legislator now. And so my whole, reason for doing this work is because I want to break down these barriers for others. I want others to not have to have the stigma and have the pain and suffering. And the problem is so massive. It is very much in my desire to help people have a first chance so they don't need a second chance later on in life. I mean, that's why I ran for the legislature, honestly, is to invest in our children and stop adverse childhood experiences, so people don't end up incarcerated. But when we are incarcerated, I think it's uniquely difficult for women because of our disproportionate rates of sexual violence and trauma and domestic violence. And, having been victimized so much and then going to this place where it's very oppressive and it victimizes us more, from, strip search policies to inability to see our children and connect with our children, or even make phone calls home, to the way that we are treated. It's adding trauma on top of already traumatized people. And then we're kicked out with, $40 and a bus ticket and told not to come back and discriminated against when we want to get jobs or a place to live or volunteer in our kids' school. It's something I still can't do today, even as a state legislator and a lawyer, is go on a field trip with my kids. And, it seems like it never ends. And so I am grateful by the opportunity to share our stories and hope that more people will become involved in the solutions that we need. So thank you for having me.
Brittany.
All right, I can jump in here. Yeah, so Tara actually covered so much. So my name is Brittany Lovely. I'm currently the Washington Statewide Reentry Council Coordinator, but I'm here in a personal capacity to share my story with you and just kind of talk about some changes, of course, that need to be made in the system, but share where I came from, how I got where I am now, and just kind of the journey in between, and how many other people experience similar things, right? So I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm a survivor of sexual assault, and I'm a survivor of racial trauma. I grew up with the passing side of my family. My father's African American, and my mother is Hawaiian, Japanese, and German. And she was a single mother raising me and my sister. My sister is 9 years older than me, and she was in active addiction and the one who was tasked with taking care of me. She was dealing with her own childhood trauma. She's a sexual assault survivor, and she was self-medicating. So I was introduced to this at a very young age, and also living in a very white and rural community. So there was a lot of racial trauma growing up, which led to a lot of anger and confusion because I didn't understand why I was different or why I wasn't accepted or why I was made fun of. But I was labeled an outsider before I was ever able to choose anything. So, I mean, fast forward, right? I ended up following a similar path as my sister and ended up having substance use disorder and was in and out of the system, juvenile, and then many stays in jail, similar to Tara and that. And my addiction progressed. I made a lot of decisions based on my trauma, based on the desperate circumstances I was living in, and just the horrible trauma that I kept enduring. I ended up going to prison, and there that exacerbated all the trauma, right? Tara mentioned just the strip searches and everything, but also the male authority, the authority of males in that system was triggering in itself because of the relationship trauma that I had already suffered through. So this was not helpful. It did exacerbate the trauma, and trying to figure out all of that with people that weren't very trauma informed, which I know Sarai is going to touch on. It was, I mean, difficult to say the least, right? So I released with not a huge plan, right? I didn't know what my future would look like, but somebody did take me under their wing while I was in there and step out of their role and actually went against policy to help me figure out a path that might work for me. I took a 2-credit job skills class. It was required. And I went there and I sat down and she showed us, we're going to go over how to make a resume, how to write a cover letter, and show you some interview skills. And hopefully you're employable when you get out, you know? And so I sat down in that class and was working on my resume and my cover letter. And I was like, okay, I already know how to do this stuff just from school or from whatever, right? From earlier in life, I know how to do this stuff. And she brought in, I think it was like the second class or something. She brought in a list of employers that hire, it was like the title was like employers that hire felons. And it was like nothing that made me feel inspired. It didn't give me like hope for my future. It didn't allow me to dream. And so I said that to her. I was like, I don't really know how this is supposed to change my life. And I didn't know that would be the catalyst to changing the trajectory of my future. But I mean, I was, I guess, self-aware enough to realize that this wasn't a good option for me, what we were doing here. So she sat down and we talked about a future she talked about possibilities that I hadn't even thought of. She brought in the FAFSA application and an application to the local community college where I would be releasing. And I started school 2 months after my release. So I had a plan then, right? She met me where I was and helped me see myself going somewhere. I went to school and I killed it there. I didn't think I would succeed or fit in, just like the rest of my life, right? I didn't think that I would fit in anywhere. And I went to school and eventually I shared my story and people built a support system around me that, one, I didn't know that I needed, and two, they believed in me before I could believe in myself. So I think school was really where I found myself and started believing in the places I could go, but there was still me being formerly incarcerated. I was told the track that I was interested in was not, don't even think about it, change the track, like don't get a degree in criminal justice, right? You'll never get a job doing that. Figure out something else to do. And I mean, if I can tell somebody anything, like don't listen to that. Don't listen to the naysayers. Do not listen. I believed that for a while, but it was actually Tara's Supreme Court case that inspired me to go ahead and chase that dream despite what anybody told me. So, and here I sit today in a place that I never would have ever imagined and didn't even know existed, right? Our perspective is only so big. So I am so grateful for the opportunity to be in front of you and share my story, and just honored and humbled to be on a panel with such strong women who have overcome so much. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Sarai.
Can we see? All right. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great.
we can.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Sarai Cook, and I'm a formerly incarcerated Indigenous woman and mother. I'm also an attorney licensed to practice law in both Oklahoma and in Washington states. I was incarcerated, as you can see here on this, this slide, in Oregon in 2003 and released in 2004. But I actually started getting arrested back in 1991 when I was about 13 years old. And that culminated, just spent a lot of time in and out of juvenile hall, in a juvenile institution, and then was in prison in 2003. So a series of events led me to the realization that I could do more with my life, and that, continuing to cycle in and out of jails and prisons was not what I wanted. I really wanted to, going into prison, I missed my daughter, and I wanted to be there for her. I didn't want to be away from her. So she was 7 years old at that time. So I immediately, when I got out, I enrolled in the Portland Community College. And then I went to the University of Portland, where I studied organizational communications and entrepreneurship. Then right after that, I went to law school. And after I graduated in 2008, and I finished law school in 2011. During my time in law school, I almost lost my scholarship. And if I would have lost my scholarship, because I think you had to maintain a B average to get the school scholarship. And I wasn't going to be able to make it without that money. So I did get a diagnosis, a mental health diagnosis at that time, and requested accommodations for my finals. And because I did that, I was able to keep my scholarship. And then I was also able to sit alone in a room and do my tests so that I wasn't really distracted. And I got more time to take my tests as well. So that was helpful. And that'll tie in more when I'm going to talk about trauma and mental health, invisible mental health disabilities later on. So that little tidbit will tie in there. So after I finished law school, I went straight to Oklahoma to work for my tribe, the Muskogee Nation, where I was the director of the Community Research and Development Department. I applied to become a member of the Oklahoma Bar Association, and they put me, first they did a huge investigation that took it. I was basically questioned for 8 hours by one attorney first, and he went through all my information. Then he referred me on to a panel of about 20 attorneys who then questioned me for 3 hours. I had to present all the evidence of, when I was a victim of gun violence, all the documentation of the abuse that happened when I was a child, the documentation of the group homes I was in and the foster homes I was in. So I presented them and I just said, hey, I didn't get this way for nothing. Like I got to prison and I got to having a criminal record for a reason. And these are the reasons. This is the evidence that I'm producing. And so after it took them like about 5 minutes and they called me back in and they said, we don't think you're that same person. And they allowed me to they said, we think you've reformed enough to practice law. So then I took the bar exam and I had requested accommodations in law school for my learning disabilities, but I didn't request those at the bar exam. And I can't remember why. I guess it just didn't really occur to me, but I ended up having to take the bar exam 3 times. And, I just didn't give up. I took it once, didn't pass, took it twice. And I was like, I'm not giving up. I will take this bar exam until I pass. So finally I passed, after the 3rd time. And, I was working for my tribe at the time. And if I didn't have also the support from my tribe, because they let me work part-time and study for the bar exam part-time. And, if I didn't have that support from my tribe, I don't know what I would have done. I also taught at our tribal college and I worked in private practice. But in 2014, I got the offer to work for the United States Department of Energy as their national program manager for the Office of Indian Energy Policy and Programs. And there I was able to serve Indian country, all of the lower 48. And in doing that, there was stuff that came up with my criminal record there too. And I actually want to say that the federal government is a great place for people with criminal records, for women with criminal records, because the information doesn't even go to your hiring manager or your boss. It stays at the HR level, and they're the only ones that know about your criminal record. And as long as you've it's past a certain amount of years, or you have gone through treatment or whatever you need to do to show some improvement, the federal government is very willing to work with people in hiring. So that was actually a really good experience for me. So I left the Department of Energy and went back to work with my tribe after 3 years of federal service at the GS-14 level. And I went back to rural Oklahoma from Washington, D.C. And I worked one-on-one with tribal members being released from prison. And I got to see firsthand the systemic injustice, and that really broke my heart in the court systems there. I was going all over Oklahoma to different courthouses, and I was working with a lot of people that had applied for disability, but disability is different in different counties and different states. And in Oklahoma, it's really hard to get. You basically have to go to court and fight for yourself. They're not just going to give it to you. So I was actually working with a lot of elderly, disabled, Native people that were just caught up in the criminal justice system and had been caught up for a very long time. And they were constantly being threatened by judges, being threatened by prosecutors that they were going to send them back to jail, talking down to them, just being very, very disrespectful to my clients. And, there was really nothing they could do about it. And there wasn't much I could do about it. But they were continuously, being locked up simply for being poor and simply for, not living in rural areas that they didn't have public transportation, didn't have a way to get to court. So that was very frustrating. And then I came to Seattle. And, through a series of events, when I came to Seattle, I started to understand about like my own trauma and how my own trauma was hindering my success. And, working in criminal justice reform, I was constantly triggered, talking about my story. And I started to look back just on my career progression and, why I had left certain jobs, why I had left certain areas, and started to see a pattern in my behavior. So through just sort of self-monitoring and like looking at my history, I started to do some research, and through life experience, I found out about trauma-informed practices. So I grew up going to the Indian healthcare through the Indian healthcare services. So Indian Healthcare Services is for Native people. And I think they had trauma-informed practices before trauma-informed practices was called that, because we have Native people have, you know, historic trauma, generational, intergenerational trauma that dates back, you know, I'm alive today because a little boy walked, you know, over 1,000 miles during the relocation on the Trail of Tears. And, you know, all of our tribe was removed from Georgia, Alabama area and moved to Oklahoma, relocated. And, you know, so many people died. I'm alive today because of that. So, you know, all of those things. So, you know, Indian healthcare has had to become trauma informed for a very long time. So growing up and going there, I didn't understand why I felt comfortable there, why I felt like a human there, why I, you know, I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't want to go to any other doctors because everywhere else I felt dehumanized. I felt like they were judging me, talking down to me, you know, just not treating me well. And so when I went to Kaiser for the first time, I didn't understand. I was like, wow, they're really treating me well. They're showing me the notes they're writing about me. I'm getting full access to all my records. When I'm telling them something's going on with my body, they're listening. And if I ask for a test, they're listening and doing the test that I want. And they're understanding, they're normalizing whatever I bring to the table. They're normalizing it. They're not acting shocked about it. And so just through that experience, I started to ask around. I was like, why are they so cool? And then that's how I found out about the study, the adverse childhood experiences, that the study that Kaiser had spearheaded, and how they had completely changed their system to being trauma informed, you know, once they understood what trauma was and how it affects the brain and the body, and then people's ability to access healthcare. So I thought, if Kaiser can become trauma informed, you know, these are some of the, I mean, I wish there was a better word than entitled for doctors, but you know, like, yeah, they're smart, educated people. Like they probably have a reason to be entitled. But if these people can change an entire hospital system and become trauma informed, then why can't jails become trauma informed? Why can't prisons become trauma informed? Why can't anywhere that touches people that have been incarcerated become, and like public agencies, governments, courts, everybody, you know, become trauma informed, like understand what trauma does to the body, understand what trauma does to the mind, understand what trauma does to behaviors. I'm currently through the National Trauma Awareness Initiative. This is an initiative that I founded and I'm leading. And within the National Trauma Awareness Initiative, we're currently doing a study on our website for people that are incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, to do an ACEs test. And you know what I think that will show, and other studies have also shown, is the prevalence of high levels of trauma within the formerly incarcerated community. And it's I think it's really, really one of the most important things that we can do at helping women to re-enter after a period of incarceration is to understand and recognize and honor that most likely they are coming from having, you know, not 4 adverse childhood experiences, not 6 adverse childhood experiences, 9, 10, 11 adverse childhood experiences, like every single adverse childhood experience, most likely. So yeah, like I said, I believe, you know, helping women in a trauma-informed way is one of the most impactful changes that we can make when we're providing services. Because without it, many women won't access services because they'll be too triggered. And, you know, if they're not feeling respected and they're not feeling honored and they're not feeling that they're getting the help that they need, it's really easy to just give up. It's very, very easy. Like that's why I founded this initiative. So at this time, I'd like to offer some policy suggestions, and I'm going to offer these suggestions in the context of a story. So when I first started working within the context of the criminal justice system reform, I didn't have the right thinking. I didn't have the right words to speak intelligently about system reform. So on many occasions, I said in meetings that I was grateful for my period of incarceration. So, but now upon reflection, I see that I wasn't grateful for my period of incarceration. I was grateful for the resources that I gained and access to resources due to my period of incarceration. So inside prison, I gained access to cognitive behavioral therapy, 6 months of intensive drug and alcohol treatment, job skills such as typing and welding, the gift of time to self-reflect and read. I read a lot of books about mindfulness and becoming more self-aware and gaining the ability to self-reflect, which up until that point, I didn't have any of those skills. I lived constantly in fight or flight mode my entire life. I lived constantly in a state of, parasympathetic nerve system, just having to make plans A, B, C, D, E to make sure that my daughter and myself were going to be okay. So for 24 years, I believe that every thought that came in my mind was true. And I gained the ability through cognitive behavioral therapy to question my own thoughts and values. So I can't speak for every incarcerated woman, but I can tell you that every single incarcerated woman I know both have severe PTSD through childhood trauma or domestic violence or sexual assault trauma. Further, every incarcerated woman I know has self-medicated these traumas through excessive use of alcohol and drugs. So substance use and abuse is the symptom of the problem. I hope that we can all work together to give access to resources before the need for incarceration is present, in order for women and girls to benefit from therapies. Their basic needs for food, clothes, and shelter should be met. Once the basic needs are met, then other interventions become possible. The opposite of addiction is connection. So identifying recovery communities and other healthy communities is key to helping people stay out of incarceration. Affordable housing is one of the, is the number one need for women getting out of prison, a place like a secure and safe place to live. Working to remove barriers to low-income housing for women with felonies, therapy, and specifically trauma therapy. I've had great jobs with great insurance. Still so hard to find specifically trauma therapy, not just talk therapy. And also trauma therapy from a woman of color would be the best thing for me. I've had experiences with women therapists that were not women of color, and they were bad experiences because they said things that were very triggering. They didn't understand my culture. They didn't understand like the things that they were saying that were very offensive to me. And it's so when you're a woman of color, let's say I would say Native woman, I'm a Native woman. I'm a Native woman. Everything that I do, I'm living from that perspective of a Native woman. Being a Native woman comes out for me. I don't want Nativeness to come into me. I want to live it out because I'm living it from my heart. And so like having to walk through these specific trauma therapies with someone that's, doesn't understand it was actually harmful for me. So that's really important, finding therapy, specifically trauma therapy, and having people that are culturally aware doing it. Early mental health diagnoses. So I think it's really important. So there's women and men that are in prison and they're taking all kinds of meds. It's pretty clear that they have mental health issues and severe mental health issues and mental health issues that have affected them in a way that would cause them to say they have a disability. So it's really important that while they're still inside or even before they go inside, that people are getting their mental health diagnoses. They're having it documented, and they're also being taught and informed of what their rights are and what potential accommodations they might need. Because if we're talking about building a new system and then we're talking about equity, it's not equitable for two people to be in a job. One has post-traumatic stress disorder. One has maybe ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, severe anxiety and depression, and then the other person doesn't have any of those things, well, that's not an equitable situation. So what kind of accommodations are available for those people, even in school and educational settings, letting them know what are their options. You know, they're coming out of prison, I want to go to school. What are my options as far as accommodations? Like, we want to help people be successful and give them the tools that they need to be successful. And even before that, in the courts, you know, what accommodations need to be given there so that people have equal access to justice. Jails are also a good place to have early interventions, because both these places remove the need for food, clothes, and shelter. So it's a good place to offer, you know, reset and some interventions. If incarceration is coupled with mental health programming and cognitive behavioral therapy, and gets people on medications they need, we should look at shortening prison sentences to get mothers back with their children as soon as possible. If the systems around people with high levels of trauma can work for us and not against us, then the need for long-term incarceration sentences won't be as necessary. Not that they're necessary now, but, you know, having a trauma-informed environment that you're in, coupled with getting stabilized on any medications, coupled with getting the behavioral therapies that you need, should very much cut the need for those long sentences. The longer the period of incarceration, the harder the reentry process becomes, because people get institutionalized. And it's also important to have easily available inpatient drug treatment programs. Culturally relevant drug treatment programs for women of color. Cultural relevance is key. We feel more connected when the treatment practices are culturally relevant, and being culturally relevant is trauma aware. A good way to do this is through peer support. That means employing others that look like us and have the same life experience as us, and program participants. Creating access to revenue and resources to help pay off fines and fees owed to the courts. Many women won't have a good paying job, and when released, and won't be able to afford fines and fees. So it's my opinion that courts shouldn't be funded off the backs of poor people anyways, but not only, you know, having that, not restricting funds. So if there's a program and they're helping reentry, it's a reentry program, not restricting those funds. Okay, what do you need to be successful? And it's not, oh, we can only do this or we can only do that. Okay, you need these fines paid off. Okay, then pay off the fines. Or you need, you have something on your credit that might need to be paid off. Just whatever people need to get to zero so that they have a fighting chance when they're reentering and it's not so rough on them. Streamlining the process for criminal recordcation or expungement, and developing resources and assistance with the process as a part of a social services program. The federal government conducted a study about the effects of criminal records and found that there are approximately 47,000 collateral consequences that come with having a criminal record. I'm happy to share this study with you. I can share the study if anyone needs it. It's really, a criminal record is a life sentence, especially like for someone like me that has a Class A felony. I will never be able to get that off my record. So I will be re-entering society for the rest of my life because of my criminal record. So we need to find a way to give women who are the backbone of our communities a second chance. Yeah, so I'm just gonna tell you, you know, right now that I still struggle. Like, I'll still be struggling, you know, just for me, I'll still be struggling for the rest of my life with the trauma that I had, you know, as a child, and just the compounding trauma after that. Because, you know, once those things happen, a lot of other things, it's kind of like when you stub your toe or you cut yourself, then you hit yourself, then you keep hitting that toe. So that's the analogy that I use. But I, you know, feel free to look up our website, follow our the YouTube channel. I'm interviewing people, men and women that are formerly incarcerated, about the traumas that led them to their incarceration and how that has affected them, and policies that we can, how we can change the system. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Sarai, and to each of you for really highlighting and talking about the many forms of trauma each of you touched on that so many women and men in the system face, but especially women, and also the critical importance of trauma-informed responses and programs. So, and Sarai, thank you so much for helping transition us into thinking about the many of barriers that exist for women and reentry. And so I'm hoping we can take a few minutes now if Representative Simmons and Brittany, if you have thoughts on additional barriers that women face in reentry, and we can also transition into thinking about the laws and policies, right, that need to change, and programs that need to be expanded, and any work you may be doing on that front too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. It's been really wonderful to work alongside Brittany in the legislature since I got elected. January, is when I took office, and our first bill, which Jamie, you've been working on for many years too, was the voting rights restoration bill, which was my first bill that the governor signed in my freshman session, which was really wonderful. We've been trying that for years, and now, restoring the right to vote is really important because it helps our government and elected officials see us as people and as constituents if we are voters. And it also restores a sense of dignity and allows us to be part of our community. But Brittany and I have also been co-conspirators on many things. This first session, I was able to get $5 million. There's never been any money from the state legislature to fund community-based organizations that are doing reentry work and helping people when they come home from prison. And we got $5 million that went over to the Reentry Council where Brittany works. And now, the Reentry Council is, going to give that money out to community-based organizations, nonprofits, instead of just loading the Department of Corrections budget more, where they are not able to really meet the needs of the people because they are part of the system, and the people reentering, women reentering, don't necessarily trust their their probation officer, their community custody officer to provide, culturally relevant, trauma-informed support to them, and even just talk with them through a lot of challenges. So that was a big thing. We also got a bill through around in-home care providers, which we know is disproportionately women's work. Women are caregivers in our community, and our childcare workers, and our in-home care providers, and our nurses. And there's so many challenges to entering that workforce because of regulations and laws. And so we got a bill through that would chip away at that as well. And now there's no longer automatic disqualification to be an in-home care provider for more offenses. And so that was really good. And we're working on implementation of that now. One of the things that Brittany is really, involved in and leading the coalition around is housing justice for formerly incarcerated people. So I'm really excited that that's going to be a bill that I'm going to introduce this coming session. And Brittany is on the leadership team of that coalition effort. And, it will basically ban the box for housing across our state, where you can no longer ask if you are convicted of a crime on a rental application, because that shouldn't be a reason to not allow somebody to have safe and affordable housing. There's so much we have to do for all people when it comes to housing affordability, rent control, behavioral health investments, not unique necessarily to formerly incarcerated people, but to so many people that are struggling right now, especially in these times of COVID-19. But carving out and making sure that formerly incarcerated people formerly incarcerated women are included in all of these policies and laws is really important. The other thing that I'm working on is the court fines and fees, and making sure, I'm very hopeful that after my bill 1412 passes the legislature, with a new amendment, there's going to be $0 given to poor people anymore when you're convicted of a felony in Washington state. And so that is going to be huge. And there'll still be more work that needs to be done on courts of limited jurisdiction and more. I see Justice Bobby Bridge is on the Zoom here on the webinar. She's such an inspiration to me. And, I can't do this work without people who have, Justice Bridge, recently just sent me an article that I was in the Seattle University Law School thing. And just knowing that she thought of me, gives me resilience to keep fighting, because I still am a woman who has an ACE score of 10 and still struggles. And the advocacy world in the legislature is a very, very toxic place to work. And so having supportive people around me and knowing that I have friends that are on this webinar with me, both here on the panel and in the audience, who encourage me and keep me going every day towards the hope and vision I have to change this world, is really what, keeps me going. And another bill I'm working on will streamline the vacation process in Washington state for people that are looking to have their records vacated and have a real second chance. That means they are no longer convicted of a crime. And so we're working in that area as well. And then the Survivor Justice Act, which will make sure that judges have to take into consideration if you've been a survivor of intimate partner violence in your sentencing, and hopefully you'll be diverted away from the criminal legal system and also be eligible for resentencing. There's just so much. I have a long list of things that I'm working on this coming session, and I have to remember self-care, because it's a lot of work, and I'm experiencing it right now leading up to session, and excited for what we will get done. And I don't think we will get everything done, but we're going to keep pushing and keep pushing. And it takes a lot of people coming together to make these things happen. So Brittany, I want to turn over to you to share about your experience working in policy and all you do.
Thank you, Tara. I just want to say we've got your back. I always love following all you're doing, and just am so appreciative of all the work that you put in on behalf of our community. So I've got your back 100%, and I love the honor of working beside you. So I think that you touched on a lot of things that like the voting rights and housing justice. So I wanted to go back to those for a second and kind of chat about my experience working on those coalitions and what policy work looks like on this end. For me, I never in a million years would have imagined being in the positions that I'm in today. I get to share my story and use that to change things that I struggled with, or change things that were barriers to my reentry for people who are coming out after me. The voting rights bill is just near and dear to my heart. I know that, so I got out in 2015. I released June 16th, 2015. And so the following year and the whole year leading up, right, we're going into a primary election and a presidential election. And I was in political science classes. I was in, basically any class that I was in, people were talking about the election, and people were trying to have you sign initiatives walking across campus, or sign up, are you registered to vote, chasing you around on campus, which now I'm like, go them. But at the time I was like, just leave me alone. Like, I don't want to share. I can't register. I can't, I can't vote. And I don't want to share with anybody walking next to me that I'm not eligible. Right. So I'm just like, no, just like avoid them at all costs. And I felt like I could participate in all of these conversations, but I care so much about social issues, and so much about the future of our country, and so much about, the world that I'm leaving behind for my nieces and my loved ones. And so feeling like I didn't have a voice in my community or in the nation, right? We're having a federal election here, huge, choosing our next president. And like, the issues were just so hot. People were having these conversations, and it was like a main topic, and I just felt so outside. So I know that sense of belonging that you get from being able to feel like you have a voice is so important for reentry, right? I was hiding my views and the way that I couldn't sign up to vote, right? I couldn't register because of where I was and my story, but I was hiding that and not embracing all of me. So like I have actually gotten personal feedback from people who are now affected by the bill that we passed, and it's just overwhelming to hear the stories of people who are so appreciative of the right to vote, and so that one was very, 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 very personal to me. And then the housing, I have struggled with finding places to house from private landlords. You know, I've shared because I would rather be upfront than have them find out later and having paid whatever application fee for trying to apply for apartments or places to live. Even working in state government with this position, I was looking to move to Olympia, where I mean, I'm doing this work and I was denied housing. So it's just these barriers are, they just stack up, right? You can't even imagine what it feels like to be judged off of one thing, you know, like the worst thing, the worst day of my life or the worst part of my life. That's what somebody can take one look at that and decide that that's who I am and I don't deserve a normal life. I don't deserve somewhere to stay. I don't deserve a specific job. They want to turn me away from having a voice in my community. Like those things are so degrading. And just the fact that, you know, you don't know anything about me based on the label that I was given of felon. You know, you don't know anything about me or how hard I love or who I am as a person and how much I care about our community. So I just think it's important that we really humanize these issues. And I think Tara does a wonderful job having that voice in our legislature, and 100% representation matters, having voices at the table, making huge decisions for our communities and for our future. So I'm honored to do the work that I do.
Well, thank you both so much. So I put in the chat for folks to see, and thank you, Francis. I think I just sent it to the panelists, but our Voting Rights Restoration Coalition website. So if you want any more information about the new law, Representative Simmons's first bill that she passed in the legislature, click on the link and the law goes into effect January 1st. So for folks in the audience, all of you know someone who probably thinks they aren't eligible to vote, but this law may actually restore their right to vote. And we still have a lot of folks that don't think they can vote. So please be informed and take action and help spread the word. So why does the hour? It seems like we're going to have so much time to cover so many things and it sort of flies by, but I want to, I don't know if we have any questions yet in the Q&A, so we'll just leave a couple minutes at the very end for that. So Francis, if there are any questions, but so my last question, so thank you all so much. I know there's so much work to be done and you all are leading in so many incredible ways, but it's always good to, if we can, think about ways that the audience can take action and support your work. So are there any recommendations or suggestions you have about how folks can support you in the work?
Our National Trauma Awareness Initiative is providing trainings for organizations, court systems, attorneys. We have trainings developed specifically for attorneys and judges and court systems to learn how to be more trauma aware when you don't have high levels of trauma, when you may have 0 adverse childhood experiences. It's really hard to understand what people are going through. And so we try to help people to understand what that's like. As well as, you know, just learning more about watching our, especially for policymakers and judges and attorneys, watching the YouTube channel for National Trauma Awareness Initiative. We are speaking with people that are formerly incarcerated and talking about the challenges that they faced in reentry and while in prison and how we can do it better. So just hearing from the people that are actually have experienced the criminal justice system.
Well, for us, I would say, to get involved in the legislative session, go to ledge.wa.gov and watch hearings, public safety, civil rights and judiciary, housing. I mean, all of the things. One good way you could do that is to email civilsurvival.org, info@civilsurvival.org, and connect with our policy manager who works hand in hand with Brittany. They're like best buds, and they're coordinating and several different bills and campaigns. And I'm sure there's a place for you to support. So I think, civil survival is a good way to connect, but Brittany might have other suggestions too.
I think that you covered it. I was going to offer some broad suggestions. Just get involved in the ledge session and really, find places that you are passionate about, right? Like housing. If you believe that everyone deserves safe housing, safe and affordable housing, then there's somewhere for you. If you want to work on the voting rights stuff, or if you know anybody who employs people who were formerly incarcerated, like let them know about the implementation of this bill next year. And I mean, use any power that you have in an equitable and fair way. Like consider what it would be, what you could do, right? How life-changing it could be if you have a hiring practice that doesn't allow people who are formerly incarcerated to work with you. Maybe revisit that policy, because I'm a hard worker. I know that my community, we know where we came from, and I'm a hard worker, and I'm dedicated to anything that I put my mind to. So if you have, if you're a landlord or if you have housing, like consider what that would mean for a family who has a formerly incarcerated parent, what that would mean for them to be safe and housed and have somewhere beautiful to have Christmas. Think about us when you do anything when you employ your power in any way. We all touch so many lives. And so just think about us.
Beautifully said. So Frances, I don't see any questions from the audience. Is that right?
I don't see any active questions. I had a question.
Go ahead.
I will be selfish and ask my question. Tara, Representative, you did say that there are upcoming bills and legislation in the next session. Are there ways that both individually, but also as the Center for Women and Democracy, we can help with the education element? So I imagine any pushback that comes from any side on some of these issues is due to a lack of education, a lack of awareness, a lack of empathy. And so what are ways that we can help around, awareness in particular, perhaps, or, unlearning bad or misinformation or bad stereotypes and relearning? How can an organization like ours and even our individual members help in that specific way?
I think that's a great question. And, one thing that you could do is host, a webinar like this, or send an email out about, our particular priority bills, educating your membership and asking them to join and take action and email their legislator, asking them to vote yes on a particular bill. I can tell you, as a legislator, the ACLU has a great mailing list, and they get people to email us like 100 emails on the same topic, like vote no, or vote yes, and so whatever extent your organization has that capacity to get your membership to be mobilized and do that, I think is great. So we should probably follow up, and I would say stay close to Jamie and Brittany, because they will be organizing all of that outside stuff while I'm going inside the monster and trying to convince my colleagues that this is important, that they should vote yes.
Thank you. Well, we are past time, and or we're right at time, I should say. Are there any from any of the other panelists, or Jamie yourself, any sort of last or parting words you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I'll let the panelists go first. Any closing remarks you'd like to share quickly?
I just want to, say thank you so much for having us to the center, and also just to my co-panelists for their stories and being willing to share them. It is hard to navigate this world as a formerly incarcerated woman still, with the enormous amount of luck and privilege and opportunity I've had. And all of the people who watch this or are attending now can do something. And I will say, of course, I saw Justice Bobby Bridge, and it just melted my heart, because she really is such an encouragement to me. And I might hear from her every few months, but she, just sends a nice note. All of that helps people build resilience. But I love the examples that Brittany gave about wherever you're at in this world, thinking through your power, and are you an employer? Are you a landlord? Do you have resources to give to this movement? Do you, whatever that resource looks like, money, time, talent, treasures, and become part of it and help us. So thank you all.
And I will just echo Tara, and just I'm deeply humbled to be before you and be able to share my story, and hopefully it moved somebody in the room. Hopefully you got something out of this. I really appreciate the chance to be here and be on this great panel with these wonderful women, and to share just this time with you. And yeah, use your power.
So for all the attendees, if you're not someone that has suffered from adverse childhood experiences, please learn more about it, and please learn how it affects people, and try to understand. And then also look at your own biases and behaviors and say, are these harming people that have suffered from these things?
Thank you so much. And again, I'd like to, acknowledge the depth of effort and care and energy that it takes for you to share these stories and these lived experiences with us. I know it doesn't come without its own triggers and perhaps reliving that trauma. So thank you for taking that on for our benefit, for our education. I truly appreciate that. And I feel I can speak on behalf of the attendees as well. Just to close out, I'd like to remind everyone that we have these events monthly, the third Thursday of every month. Our next one is November 18th, and we're going to be actually talking to more representatives from the state legislature about working across the aisle. So we're looking forward to that conversation, and to stay connected with us on social media and through our email address at info@womenindemocracy.org. If there's a topic or a speaker you'd like to hear from, please do let us know so we can build that into our programming. And one final thank you to Jamie in particular, who's been a great supporter of the Center for Women in Democracy and leading our discussion today, and to Tara and Sarah and Brittany. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you see success in everything that you're working for, and we will do what we can to use our power as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening, and stay well and be healthy.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, friends.